Mosiah Garvey. It is indeed a pleasure to be able to be with you this afternoon as we celebrate the Mico University College 190 years. Let us cheer the Mico. It is such a pleasure to be able to celebrate this occasion with you. Wrong? All right. So we have visitors with us. Clap yourselves. I want to also acknowledge our technicians, our IT team. Correct, sir? I want to clap them, and marketing. I want to welcome you all to this wonderful occasion. Now, you have a program before you, but I am not Dr. Albert Benjamin. Today, I am Mrs. Desiree Burrell Ingram, the department head for social sciences here at the Mico University College. It is my pleasure to be deputizing for our own Dr. Albert Benjamin, Vice President of Academic Affairs. And without further ado, I'm going to be introducing to you our special guest lecturer. And I want you just to listen and enjoy hearing about this professor. I want to add my own little taste and flavor to it. He was my lecturer at the University of the West Indies. And he remembered me the first time when he saw me again after many years. So apparently my features have not changed at all. So that's a good thing, right? So Professor Clinton Hutton, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today. He is CD, PhD, the director of the Institute of Technological and Educational Research, ITA, here at the Mico University College. He was elevated to the position of Professor of Caribbean Political Philosophy, Culture, and Aesthetics at the University of the West Indies, where he lectured for over 30 years. I was able to be a part of that moment. Professor Hutton is a distinguished fellow at the P.J. Patterson Institute at UWI. He is an award-winning researcher and author with a distinguished record of research and publications. His latest publication is Marcus Garvey, Pedagogy and the Power of Education, which he edited with Dr. Asburn Pinnock, who is our president. This volume is published by the newly established the Mico Publisher. His numerous publications include books such as Color for Color, Skin for Skin, Marching with the Ancestral Spirits into War at Morant Bay, Leonard Percival Howell and the Genesis of Rastafari, The Logic and Historical Significance of the Haitian Revolution and the Cosmological Roots of Haitian Freedom, and Rupert Lewis and the Black Intellectual Tradition, just to name a few. This internationally known scholar and cultural figure has published multiple scores of book chapters, journal articles, edited journal, and works of an artistic nature. Professor Clinton Hutton is performing poetry for some 5 years. Today, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium our guest and our special presenter, a part of the Mico family, Professor Clinton Hutton. Make him feel welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. Fellow Miconians, good afternoon. And good afternoon to our visitors to the Mico. And the title of my lecture, this is what now, the third one or the fourth one? The title of it is Mico's Journey, 190 years. This year is 190 years since Mico was established in 1836, when slavery was still going on. Slavery was abolished completely in 1838. The Emancipation Act went through the British Parliament in 1834. By the British Parliament, 20 million pounds. The British Parliament assessed that it would take 48 million pounds to compensate those people who worked and exploited without pay, people of African descent. The British Parliament, in order to come to some settlement with the dominant, they were the dominant political class, the plantocracy in the British Parliament, but then they started to lose out to the class that was more driven by industrial manufacturing type of work. And so they assessed that 48 million would be what was needed for compensation, and that the British Parliament borrowed $20 million to pay for the loss of stock of the people that they exploited for 329 years without pay, in absolute brutality, which we won't go into. We can do that sometime else. So they borrowed 20 million pounds to pay off the slaveholders, not just in Jamaica, but the other British colonies in the Caribbean. And they finished paying off the loan and the money that they borrowed to pay the slaveholders in 2015. In 2015, the amount was 40% of British GDP. 40% in 1834. So the period that they call apprenticeship was for enslaved Africans who were supposed to be free. In 1834, August 1, this period of apprenticeship was for them to work 6 years and above. All people of African descent, 6 years and above, were supposed to work another 6 years. And that work would have gone to the part of that 48 million pounds. But because of resistance, it was cut. Apprenticeship was cut to 1838. Because it was supposed to go on until 1840. Right? Now, part of the bargaining for emancipation in the British Parliament and the movements in Britain that were opposed to slavery, to the enslavement of Africans, that part of the bargain was that one will compensate you for the loss of your stock, but two, we will set up an education system, which was really a system of religious education. public schooling for the first time in the history of Jamaica. Public schooling. That was part of what was worked out in 1833 to constitute the bill or the Act of Emancipation, which was passed in 1834. So we have people who fought against slavery for the gradual abolition of slavery. Let us be very clear. For the gradual abolition of slavery. But the enslaved people themselves were not into any gradualism. Because the gradualism would mean working more time, forced to eat human excrement, whipped, castrated, raped, mass amputation. They couldn't wait for a gradual process to take place. As the abolitionists in and outside of the British Parliament were arguing for. The leader of the movement was William Wilberforce. And I knew about him before I knew about Sam Sharp. Then William Wilberforce died and was replaced in the Parliament, took up the position as a leader of the abolitionist movement in the Parliament of Britain. And that person is the person you are seeing on the screen. Thomas Fowell Buxton. And that part of the Mico there that you see going up in the air, higher than the rest of the building, is called Buxton Tower. But the entire building is a Buxton building. Because Buxton argued in the British Parliament for education. That the enslaved, the people who are going to be free should have access to public schooling. And they all agree that this public schooling would be primarily based on religious instruction. And by religious instruction, they meant Christianity. And by religious instruction, because the documents are around, by religious instruction, they mean principally teaching them about obedience. That obedience to their masters, even after slavery ended, was equal to obedience to God. And so that was the type of education. It was this man, Thomas Fowell Buxton, Sir Thomas Fowell Buxton, who in the process of this argument in the process of doing that, he found out that there was some money laying around the place. Because in the 17th century, one Lady Mico, the 17th century, so we're now talking about the 19th century, in Buxton time, Buxton found out that she left a will, and the will grew from £1,000 into a whole heap of money. over those 2 centuries. And what he was able to do was to get them to divert that money to education for the enslaved Africans. So there was a Lady Mico charity, and Lady Mico left that money not for people of African descent who were enslaved, but for European women who were captured in the Mediterranean and enslaved in primarily the Arab world. So it was for white women that if they are able to get back some of these women, there should be a fund available to help them along the way. But that was 200 years before. And then Buxton made use of it. He, along with another member of parliament by the name of Stephen Lushington. Anybody here from Lushington House? Who say no? There's an anti-Lushington voice there. Okay, all right, good. And then in 1835, they sent out a team headed by Reverend True, T-R-E-W, to establish a number of schools called the Mico schools, named after Lady Mico. And so the schools that were established were not just established in Jamaica, but they were established in the British Caribbean territories. And in fact, a few territories in Africa. And the Parliament also passed a law granting £30,000 annually to help with that education in Jamaica. And that money was reduced gradually. Every year it went down. And that funding, that education budget, lasted for 9 years. It ended in 1845. So, and in 1845, in order to keep the institution, Mico, to preserve it, what they actually did was to stop the elementary schools that were Mico schools, including from where I'm from in Hanover. They set up elementary school, or what we now call primary schools, and infant schools across Jamaica. And one institution of the Mico survived, and it was called the normal school. School where people are trained to be teachers. And that school was called Mico College. Today, it is Mico University College, and which the name suggests a form of growth. Mico began as a co-educational institution. Just do it on this? I thought you could do it with this. Oh, two buttons above. Okay. All right. That is Chu, Reverend Chu, who before he came back to Jamaica in 1835 was really in a missionary in Jamaica before that. And he was sent back to carry out the mission of establishing these schools. Mico, as a normal school, as a teacher's college, was established, was opened in 1836. 1836. At Havana, Havana? At Hanover Street, where Kingston Technical College is today. That's where Mico used to be. And this is a drawing of what it was then. That's Mico as it was. We talk about Mico started off as a co-educational institution, but ended 9 years after it started. One of the first students at Mico was this woman here, right here. She was called Catherine. What is it? But she was one of the first, if not the first woman, to be admitted to the Mico. She was amongst the first set of Mico students. By 14, she was teaching. And I think she started her college just around that time, or a little older. She was taken to Jamaica from Angola in West Central Africa. She and her friend, she and her sister, and a friend, were on one of the beaches enjoying themselves when men in canoe came up and promised them if they come with them, they would give them sweets. And the boy amongst the girls immediately ran away. And the girls went, and they were kidnapped and placed into big ships out at sea with hundreds of people to be sailed to Cuba. And when they reached the southern parts of Jamaica, southern towards Kingston, the south, or to the southwest of Kingston, on the way to Cuba, the ship sank. It went on rocks or reefs and sunk, and many people drowned. But others were rescued, including the person who is called Catherine, but that's a name, or given Jamaican name. Right? That's her given Jamaican name. That is sitting down there. She was one of the first women, if not the first woman, to be trained by Mico College, or the Mico Normal School. She became a missionary. She got married to a missionary, went back into Europe, went back to Africa, in Europe. She divorced her husband. And she got the man that is standing behind her was the husband that she married after the first. And so the story of her, we were able to get because in a large measure, he also helped to tell that story. Right? So there they are with their family. She died in her 70s towards the end of the 19th century. Right? So, the second, so they tried at the beginning, at the genesis of Mico, for it to be a co-educational institution. And it didn't work out. Because one of the first things that you chop when the budget is down is to chop women out of it. That's what they did, really. The third attempt, the second attempt to make this institution co-educational was in 1901 to 1916. During that period, women were accepted into Mico. Under the leadership, the principal then, A.B. McFarlane. He died in 1919, but the program ended in 1916. Then the third attempt was in 1956 under the principalship of A.J. Newman, who served the longest period as principal for Mico. From 1924 to 1959. He died and was buried here. Buried in Jamaica. Like all the principals before, they were not from Jamaica. They were from Britain, including A.J. Newman. A.J. Newman got married to a Jamaican woman, have a family, and died here, buried here. And while he was principal, he started to write children's book. I don't know if you probably wouldn't know this book about Mr. Willie rolling in the mud and all of them something there. Right? When I was a little boy, I was familiar with those characters. Then, so, slavery ended. It didn't end because the British became kinder to people of African descent or to subjecting non-European peoples. But the class of people in the British Parliament who came to dominate the Parliament were more the class of people who were into manufacturing, science and technology, and so on. And at the head of that was boxing. Why? Because they felt that sugar production has seen its time, has had its day. What they would need for is more people to be able to work as free laborers, and you pay them wages. so that they can buy products. And they figure that the more you do this, is the wealthier that class of people will become. And it's right. The second thing, though, that put an end to slavery was, first and foremost, an uprising of some 30,000 people in Western Jamaica, led by Samuel Sharp in 1831 to 1832. That helped to speed up the process of emancipation. So emancipation came by two routes. The people, the enslaved people who determined that they do not want any crawling peg emancipation. They want the freedom now. No. And in fact, they had a strike, and the strike was no work without pay. In other words, once you are able to accomplish that, that would be the end of slavery. Because the primary principle of slavery is forcing people to work without pay. At least the one that was experienced by Africans who were enslaved by the Europeans, just called chattel slavery. And so when emancipation came, characters like this one, Bogle, Paul Bogle, and people like George William Gordon, those persons actually, Paul Bogle himself set up a school in Stony Gut in 1865. And George William Gordon set up several schools in St. Thomas. And George William Gordon used to tell in his various meetings to impress upon the recently freed Africans that they should get all the education they needed in order to replace the white people who rule the country. He was very clear about that. One of the ways that you are going to be able to have your say is to be educated, and the reasons for that, one of the reasons for that is that you will replace in Parliament, on the boards, in government at the local and national level, you'll be able to replace them. Eventually, and we can't get into this, eventually, we have an uprising in 1865. That uprising is called in our history as the Morant Bay Rebellion. I have actually written a book because my PhD dissertation was on the ideological foundation of the Morant Bay Rebellion and its suppression, which goes into detail about some of the things that I'm talking about. Most most of the early cohorts of students to the Mico were either born in slavery or born to people who were born in slavery. Up into the 1870s, 1880s, most of the people who were incorporated in the public education programs, public schooling program, and into Mico's training of teachers were born in slavery or were born to people whose parents were born during slavery. And so, during the suppression of Paul Bogle's people in 1865, one of these persons who was born to an enslaved woman and his dad, son of Elsie Anderson, from Coley Village in St. Thomas in the east, now called St. Thomas. During the Paul Bogle-led uprising in Morant Bay in 1865, Anderson, that's the mother, had her house and everything in it burnt and much coffee destroyed by white soldiers, British soldiers. The document says her only son is being trained in the Mico institution as a day school teacher. And every shilling she can manage to get, she is obliged to send it away to him. Elsie's husband had died 11 years previously. All right, so here we have a Miconian who's the source of her income to Mico from her mother was burnt, coffee and all. But the story is bigger than that. Can go back to that. Then we have Robert Lindsay. Robert Lindsay is the first black person, the first graduate of Mico to become a tutor at Mico. Robert Lindsay. Robert Lindsay actually went to Mico before Elsie Anderson's son. He went to Mico in 1860. And Robert Lindsay, after leaving Mico, took on a school that was not doing well and turned it into the #1 school in the country. At which point, in about 1884, the Mico authorities appointed him as a tutor at the Mico. And he became a well-known Jamaican. He was a teacher of English and was principally competent in English grammar. His students call him Old Tute or Old Tutor. And when the Jamaica Union of Teachers was founded, he was elected its treasurer and re-elected from 1875 until his death in 1904. Huh? So, that's Edward Eyre, who led what was termed that during that time by an author as the reign of terror of what happened. And I can tell you that it was real terror because I've studied it, researched it. And this man was a teacher during that time. He was in the Morant Bay courthouse. When it was being attacked by Paul Bogle and his men, and he escaped. And the British hired him to read people their rights, R-I-T-E-S, when they were being executed. This man. But his name is Matthew Joseph. He was also a poet. He was born in slavery. His father was enslaved in Jamaica, but was a chief before being taken into slavery. And apart from reading people's rights, including students that he taught, he was also put in charge of the party of stealing the people's coffee and goats and pigs by the British soldiers in St. Thomas. By the way, towards the end of the 19th century, one of his sons became a student at Mico. And he went on to become a lawyer, but died, I think, in the Turks, one of those islands. At a young age, he was 42. Right? So that is Matthew Joseph. That is George William Gordon. In 1896, Mico moved, because they were increasing the population now. Mico moved from Hanover Street to where we are now, 1896. And this was the building that they moved into. It was built for the purpose of the college. That was how Mico, that was what Buxton Tower used to look like. Until it was destroyed by the earthquake of 1907. And it was rebuilt. And after it was rebuilt, shortly thereafter, it was burnt down. Big fire. In fact, Michael lost some of the earlier documents that could have been very useful to us now. Those were lost during the fire. And then it was rebuilt, and the structure that you now see out there is that structure, when it was reopened in 1911. Right? A number of things happened In 1892, 1892, Mico changed the way it was operating. In the beginning, Mico had what they call a superintendent. That was equivalent to what we would call a principal. Right? So when it started operating, it had a superintendent as the head and a board of advisors. And that lasted from 1836 until I think it's 1884. 1894. So we have had a number of superintendents from that time until the practice ended, when a board of directors was put in place of the board that they originally had, that board of advisors. That board of advisors was really advisory, but it was able, one of the things that they used to do was to visit Mico schools around the island before they were dismantled in the earliest period. But they used to also set the exam for entry into the Mico. You don't have to do that now, but up to recently, or up to your parents' time, people had to take an exam. Come from wherever they are, from Jamaica, and come up here and take an exam. And they would read out before everybody who passed and who has to go back home. Right? It wasn't pretty. But one of the things that no, in this. It stopped. I hope it stopped, but gone. All right, you can turn it off. Okay. So the board was changed as it was then, and the board used to also set exams and gave out certificates. Right? Until we changed to a board of directors towards the end of the 19th century. And the first chairman of the board of directors was this man on the screen. Enos Nuttall. And you're sitting down in the Enos Nuttall lecture theater. And he was chairman of the board of directors for a very long time. He was a bishop of Jamaica, and then after he became archbishop of the Caribbean. Right? So that system that came into being towards the end of the 19th century is the same system that we now have, although other things developed to complement it. Right? Some of the persons who headed the Mico as superintendent were E.A. Walbridge, and Walbridge was succeeded by John Miller, and Miller was succeeded by George Hamilton Henderson, and what George Hamilton Henderson, and he was succeeded by Samuel Whitehouse. And Whitehouse was succeeded by Dr. John Martin. And Martin retired in 1884. But at that time, during that period of time, he was the longest superintendent or principal of the Mico. And he said things that he retired, but there are also things to suggest that he was asked to retire, because they were not, at that point in time, they were not satisfied with his work. Right? And he was replaced by two persons with the same job. And they were called co-principal. And that lasted until 1898. The co-principals were this man, Reverend William Gillies, and the other person, trying to find a better photo of him, but I'm going down to the portrait library at the National Gallery to see if they have any of him. I saw a newspaper report. It's not good enough. His name was, the co-principal's name was Lieutenant Colonel Lyndon George Grouchy, Gruchy. Right? And they were in this position from 1884 to 1898. And it was during this time that Robert Lindsay, Old Tute, was appointed as tutor to the Mico, and he tutored at Mico for over 20 years. Huh? Let me see. All right. All right. This is an 1898 photo of the Mico around the Boston area there. I don't know if you can, this man here, see it? Can you see there? Yes. All right. This man here is Old Tute. He's almost certain to be him. It can't be anybody else, although the name was not written there. That is him. Right? From his position where he's sitting, along with other members of staff, and the students standing around or sitting in front. And the only black person there, a white beard, that's Old Tute. Right? Me? Anybody with a white beard will look like him. Yes. This man here was not a teacher, was a journalist and a medical doctor, born in the Bahamas, Dr. Joseph Robert Love. What is the importance of this man at that time? Towards the end of the 19th century and at the early parts of the 20th century. He had a newspaper called the Jamaican Advocate, and he advocated for teachers. And that brought a lot of teachers close to him. He advocated for teachers. Moreover, he advised one of the main persons, in fact, the main persons, who founded the Jamaica Union of Teachers. The Jamaica Union of Teachers was the first trade union in Jamaica. And the principal players, not entirely, but mostly, almost entirely, the principal players in the founding and sustenance and in the clarity of what this institution should be were Mico graduates and Mico principals. Grouchy, for example, was elected the first president of the Jamaica Union of Teachers, the JUT. But there are other persons, and he was elected 4 times, 3 times consecutively. But then you have other persons like J.J. Mills, John James Mills. When I came here 2,000 years ago, I had to read his book as part of my course. I don't know if you do that anymore. There's a book, green cover wrap, about J.J. Mills, edited by one of his former students, R.N. Murray. Murray, a graduate of Mico, went on to become one of the first professors in education at the University of the West Indies. And from what I've been reading in my research, he was one of the first persons, one of the first persons to write about Mico from a historical perspective. That's very important for those who are doing research and for those who want to trace the intellectual development of the historiography of the Mico. Right? The thing about this man, he advised the leading founder of the Jamaica Union of Teachers on things that they should consider in order to form this organization. This organization was eventually replaced in the 1960s by the JTA. Right? But not only that, he was elected to the Legislative Council of Jamaica, like the Jamaican Parliament, in the 1920s because of teachers' support for him at the ballot box. Right? So although he was not a teacher, but more than that, this man had a very important impact on Marcus Garvey. Very, very important impact on Garvey. Right? And Garvey has written about that and said so. To really give him clarity and to shape his philosophy, he used to read this man's newspaper every day. The Jamaica Advocate. Then this man, Alexander Dixon, born in 1852. That means his parents would have been born in slavery. 1852. And attended the Mico. He became the first black person in Jamaica to be elected to the Legislative Council. This man. That is he. Alexander Dixon. And guess what? He and Marcus Garvey used to be in the same organization, the National Club, in which Garvey was the editor for their newsletter. He was 25 years older than Garvey. Garvey was a youngster. When Garvey founded the UNIA, he was not 26 yet. He was still 25. And so here, in the beginning of the 20th century, he was working along with Garvey on a national project to develop the capacity of Jamaicans for freedom and sovereignty. This is A.B. McFarlane, and McFarlane became the principal after the co-principals, and he died in 1919. But when the co-principalship ended, he became, so he served for over 20 years. Right? And we have other stuff on them and so on, where they were trained, what policies they brought to the Mico, what was their attitude to this and that. Then his place was taken by this man. This man is John Hartley Duff. Do you know about the Duff Prize here at Mico? You don't know about the Duff Memorial? Come on. Tell me a lie, you're a lie. There's a Duff Prize for the most outstanding student. You don't have that anymore? It is named after this man. This man was the first Jamaican to become a principal of Mico. 80-odd years after Mico was established. Duff. John Hartley Duff. Born in Brownstown. Attended York Castle College, as it was called then. It was York Castle High School. No. Then attended university in Britain. Held a master's degree in 1901 to 1903. He was made a deputy inspector of schools. After that, he went to Sierra Leone. He was always into education. Didn't stay long there because he was called back to Jamaica where he was made a full inspector of schools. And when McFarlane passed, he became the principal of Mico. But he died shortly thereafter, in 1923. But it was under his leadership that MOSA took shape. MOSA, you know what MOSA is? Mico Old Student Association. Was founded in 1921. And I think I'll probably read something about it. So it was founded in 1921. And it was under the principalship of John Hartley Duff. Founded 85 years, he became principal 85 years after Mico's founding. as we said. And he was born May 10, 1876, in Brownstown, St. Anne, to Reverend John Duff and his wife, Emily James. And he was, as you heard before, educated at York Castle College and then at Edinburgh University. And I've told you the rest of it already. The brainchild of Mosa is E.B. Rogers. Hands up who we are from Rogers House. Right, so E.B. Rogers, a graduate of Mico, in whose name Rogers House is named, is regarded as the father of Mosa. Put another way, Mosa is the brainchild of Edgar B. Rogers. At the founding of Mico, of Mosa, according to the Gleaner, there were upwards of 80 Miconians present. The following persons were elected officers of Mosa: Mr. C.H. Williams, President, Reverend J.W. Graham, and Mr. J.J. Mills, John James Mills, were elected vice presidents. Edgar Rogers, secretary. Mr. L.M. Cook, assistant secretary. Mr. W.A. Dillon, treasurer. And Mr. B.O. Johnson, librarian. What were the objectives of Mosa? 1, to bring the men who have been educated at the training college, at Mico Training College, into a closer and more sympathetic touch with one another. 2, to foster the interest of the students in college and to promote a feeling of unity among its past and present students. 3, to issue an annual calendar containing a brief resume of the past year. That's one. This is divided into two, and two. Part 2 of this is to keep a register, or make a register of all past students still living with their present addresses. Another object is a literary supplement when possible. Some form of publication. So this was Mosa, and Mosa is still going on. It has granted scholarship to numerous students over the years. And then there's a spin-off on Mosa called Mofka, a younger guy, younger in terms of age of the Mofka. But they are doing wonderful work, right? The thing about Mosa, it then became a part of the landscape, the administrative landscape and administrative and governance landscape of Mico. This is Rogers. This is a man, Edgar B. Rogers, who founded MOSA and who was part of the management of Mico later on. Right? And MOSA, one of the first things that they did was to have, from time to time, a ceremony recognizing persons, probably one at a time, it's more than that now, of high standing to honor them. Big dinner and cricket match in hotels or at Mico and other places. All reported in the Gleaner. The first recipient of the MOSA Award was this man, John Leopold King. He was the first recipient of the MOSA Award. He was a graduate of Mico. He was a schoolmaster, that is to say, a principal. He became a tutor at the Mico, and he went away to study. He had a BA as well as a LLB, a law degree. And he thereafter became, when he passed through grazing, and got his certificate to practice law. You can see him with the wig on his head. We don't know we had upon them. That was then, no. We don't know why we still wear it. Anyway. We're just saying, yeah? Yes. But this man was then regarded as Mico's real light. And he was honored, and the reports about the food that they eat and the speeches that they made and all of these things are there to be seen. And the Mico, that award is still going on. In fact, I was a recipient of that award. Yes? People like Professor Neville Ying, and these are all Miconians, because of Miconians. Professor Neville Ying, the Governor General, Sir Clifford, not Clifford, Cook, Howard Cook. Many outstanding Miconians over the years, men and women, have been awarded this gold medal. Right? And the thing about it, it focuses on one of the objects of MOSA. And that is to recognize in some tangible form work of the highest merit done by past students. And I want to suggest to you, this is one of the reasons for the founding of the Mico, the MOSA. People rally around success. And there were Miconians all over Jamaica and abroad who were doing wonderful things. In fact, they were usually the leading people in the country coming from enslavement. Right? So we have to understand. And it is the graduates. That's a photo of J.J. Mills. All right. This is a 1924 picture of the new principal, A.J. Newman. Okay, so let us just focus. I'm going to finish shortly, right? So don't get despair and start to get tired or get weary. Right? I'll be finishing soon. But I just hope you get something from this. So when we talk about success, we can actually study Mico people and see the success in various fields. The first thing to note, though, is that the biggest growth in the Jamaican middle class took place among teachers. The biggest contingent of the Jamaican middle class that arose from emancipation was teachers. And the Mico was central to the training. If you go to Mico during that time, you're almost certain to become a principal. 19th century, 20th century, the middle of the 20th century. So what are some of these success stories that people rally around and say, boy, we have to band together, you know. We can't just allow this thing to just, and we have to make it go through different generations and reach different people till it reach you know. Right? So, what are some of the success? Mico graduates, for example, founded schools. Westwood High School, for example, was principally founded by Mico graduate, Reverend William Menzies, in 1882. A long while that, you know. 1882. Albert S. Clark, who attended Mico from 1899 to 901, founded St. John's College in Kingston. Roderick Jardine Blake, who, like his father, was a graduate of the Mico, was a co-founder and principal of Tutorial Secondary and Commercial School. This, for example, was an institution attended by Lady Bustamante as a youngster, right? And Wesley Powell, right? And she had glowing things to say about this institution, right? Then you have Wesley Powell, not a Miconian, but his dad was. And they founded that complex now, Excelsior. They now have community college, they have this, they have that, right? And that man was a Garveyite, Wesley Powell, right? So I'm raising all of this to say, and we can't say all of it today. I would never be able to do that, and you would not sit down here and be tortured. But we need to know, to study, because it is success of the graduates that allow for the birth of Mosa. And the success of Mico can only be represented, or mainly be represented, in his graduates. Right? So, another Miconian, this one on the screen, Nathaniel Speed, with his daughter, Miriam Speed, founded Merle Grove High School in 1919. Another Mosa another school founded by a Miconian, and this was after the founding of Mosa, was Clarendon College. Clarendon College was founded in 1945 by Reverend Lester Davy, a graduate of the Mico. Reverend Henry Ward, the Miconian, along with Reverend Saunders, founded Meadowbrook High School in 1958. So this is just about schools founded by people who were graduates of Mico, sometimes along with others. That's a school. And then over there, when you pass to have, maybe you didn't have, when they have the little pickings across there today, you would have passed the Inafka Museum. The Inafka Museum was founded by this man, Dr. Aston Taylor, a graduate of Mico. In the 1950s, he went to Africa, having studied and graduated at Mico, and then having gone to Canada and studied. He got his first degree and a PhD in agriculture, in agronomy. And he was in the Sudan at the period when national liberation movements were on the move and countries declaring independence. And while in the Sudan helping them with their agriculture, he toured Africa, over 20 different countries in Africa, and collected artifacts, which are now, some of which are now in the museum there, to constitute the museum, which he actually started himself. Not at Mico, but up Maraska Road area, where he was living. Right? So we're talking about educational institution of different types. This is a different type of educational institution by Dr. Taylor. And in fact, when he passed away, before that, he said that when he passed away, I am requesting that you drape my coffin with a kente cloth for his burial. And I'm saying all of this to say that it was Mico graduates themselves who helped to decolonize Mico. They challenged what they were learning. Some accepted it, some in various ways. Not always hostile at all, far from being so. But they challenge and they decolonize the education that Mico, the leading institution in the country at the time. This was one of the major places for cricket and sports generally, and horticultural shows. This was one of the places where officials from all about used to come. Huh? Okay. But let us probably end by looking at a case in which there was a reunion of boys who attended Mico in 1891. And this is a newspaper report. That 1891 batch consisted of 21 boys, 6 of whom died. The remainder of 15 are doing excellent work for education and the uplift of the country generally. They all taught in the schoolroom for several years, but the majority of them branch off in various spheres of activities. Some acquiring higher education, some holding responsible public posts, a few remaining schoolmasters, but all maintaining a high place in the social and economic life of the island. The batch has produced doctors, inspectors of schools, engineers, and planters. And it goes on to say, the Mary Company under Theo Mackay, he conceptualized that meeting of his batch, that reunion of his batch, 1991 batch. Theo Mackay is the bigger brother of Claude Mackay, the poet. Right? In fact, he took care of Claude Mackay. He was far older than Claude. Right? And Theo Mackay was highly respected across Jamaica. He used to write in the newspapers. He was a justice of the peace, vice chairman of the Clarendon Parochial Board, and he was also a big banana farmer. He retired from school as principal in order to go into banana farming, which his parents were into before, long before. So he used to export banana from Jamaica to the United States. Huh? So Theo, the Mary Company included Mr. Theo Mackay, Justice of the Peace, Vice Chairman of the Clarendon Parochial Board, Dr. J.A. Watson, DMO at Crofts Hill, Mr. E.J.M. Barton, Civil Engineer, Spanish Town, Mr. Theo Harrison, teacher at Providence School, Legani, Mr. A.A. Kennedy, B.A., Inspector of Schools, Williamsfield, I think that is in Westmoreland, Mr. C.C. Patrickson, Schoolmaster at Gravel Hill, Porus, Mr. W.A. MacDonald, Schoolmaster of Spring Garden, Trelawney, Mr. C.W. Walters, Clerk of Prisons, Kingston, Mr. H.W. Lynch, Agricultural Inspector for St. Elizabeth, Mr. R.C. Clark, Planter in St. Catherine, Mr. T.A. Aikman, who entered the Mico in 1890, was present as a guest of the gathering. He was their senior, and apparently they liked him a lot, to invite him as their only main guest to that dinner of reunion. Aikman was also a much lauded person in the country. And Aikman, when Garvey came back, was deported from the United States. Aikman became an editor of the newspaper that he founded, that Garvey founded in Jamaica. That newspaper was called the Black Man. And we still have copies of the Black Man at the Institute of Jamaica. But success, was, as you can see, was not just in teaching. Because what Mico did was not just to build a black middle class in the country, but it also diversified the middle class by people who come into Mico then go into other fields like law, medicine, engineering, science, and so on. This is real. And we can find countless amount of those people to write about. All right. So, I am ending here. This man, John James Mills, is here. See him here. I have some photos. Here that he gave to his nephew. His nephew, oh, it's not in this. His nephew was a colleague of mine, the founder of the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Professor Gladstone Mills. And Professor Mills gave me those photos. And let me just show you a few of them. These are in the 1930s. These are some Miconians. This man over here is Dudley Thompson. See him over here, sir? The last one on the left in the back line, Dudley Thompson. And this one in front of him here is Lawrence. Is Vin Lawrence's father. You know about Vin Lawrence? Well, it's his dad, this. And this man here, when I was a little boy growing up now, in the 60s, my mother used to talk in glowing terms, not just my mother, but other persons in my community used to talk in glowing terms about this man. Lampart. My mother used to talk about Teacher Lampart and other older people in the community, Teacher Lampart. He went to Jericho as a principal in his 20s, early 20s to mid-20s. Spent about 4 to 6 years in Jericho. The school that I eventually went to, Jericho All-Age School, in Hanover, not the St. Catherine one. And this man over here, this one here, this is he became Dr. Aston Taylor, the founder of the In Africa Museum. So he was a student in this batch in the 1930s. Right? This was a photo saved by J.J. Mills. And this is another of some of those same people. All right. That's another picture. And this man became the first principal of Mico who was a graduate of Mico. This is Glenville Hutton. All right? So he became, in 1959, he took over, on the eve of independence, he took over from A.J. Newman, to be followed by my principal. When I came to Mico, he was a principal. He is now Professor Errol Miller. Right? Who had a strong impact on me. But here ended the words of Clinton Hutton. Thank you.
Come on, give a bigger round of applause to our own Professor Hutton. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. You're a multi-billionaire in history. Yes, very, very rich man. Clap him again. Thank you so much, sir. So before you go, we're going to give you this opportunity just to ask a few questions, or if you have any comments to make as we wrap up this wonderful session this afternoon. Are there any questions? Do we have a roaming mic? If not, just raise your hands and... Oh, yes, there is one. You're sure? All right, teacher. Go ahead.
Is that on? Yes, so female started coming here in 1956. And they are now the majority of people at Mico. Far more. They're the center of, yes, right? And there are different reasons for that. And there are outstanding females, persons who have received the MOSA award, who are managers in companies, who are outstanding principal, who is one of them was the closest person to the top leadership of the Mico, acting principal, Professor Coral Clark. There are Miconian women, what's her name again, a major player in West Indies female cricket. Right? She was on the West Indies cricket team for a long while, and so on. So we are doing research to produce a book, a special issue of Jamaica Journal of Education on this, call the same thing. Mico's journey, 190 years, and there's a section on Mico women. Right? There's a section on Mico women. And I don't know if I should put Mrs. A on the spot. She's supposed to furnish an article for that chapter on Dr. Professor Coral Clark. And I'm saying it in public. Yes, sir. Oh, they come in with a mic.
I've been educated, although I have a long relationship with the Mico.
Yes.
Because my wife, of course, is a Miconian.
Yes.
17 years old at the time. We started dating a bit early. That was 1971. And 73, she left here. And in 74, we got married. So that's 52 years ago or so, right? That's a Miconian. Huh? And, of course, Prof. Miller was my biology teacher at Excelsior High School, at Wesley Powell School.
Yes,
Right?
yes, yes.
And I was to go there today, but I found your thing more interesting. So I stopped off. Yeah? So happy to be here and to enjoy the lecture and the fine details, because I really, did not know. I was not familiar with some of the things you said, quite a few things. Okay, Clinton, Brother Clinton.
That's it. Blessings.
Thank you. Greetings again, Prof.
Greetings.
Good afternoon, colleagues and students, visitors. My question to you, sir, by the way, thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge that you would have shared. The history is quite enriching, and I just thought about present time now.
Yes.
Given that wealth, that rich history, of the Mico in education, and not just education, but in building Jamaica, our contribution and so on. How is it that we can preserve that legacy? I know that is what this week is about, but in a practical way, preserving that legacy from, say, for example, a curriculum standpoint. And I'm saying this, I'm asking this question because I know that it's obvious, you would have gone through all of that in your research and all your own experience of Mico's impact and all of that. But when I talk to present-day students, they can't appreciate the legacy of the Mico. So past Miconians, that pride, that understanding where Mico's position is in education, in academia and all of that, they can't identify with that. And so how do we preserve Mico's legacy from a curriculum standpoint for present students to appreciate and be able to make that impact as what you would have shared just now?
Yes, good question. There are many institutions outside of Jamaica, probably outside of the Caribbean, that have courses about the history and culture of their institution, right? And that's one thing. And therefore, you have courses so that students who pass that through that institution must know about the institution, right? So you could have, as said there, foundation courses about the Mico. We could have a number of courses to know about the Mico, to know about its history, but to help to shape our own resolve as well, because there are good things to learn and there are not so good things to learn. That's one thing. Courses, the other thing, publishing. I mean, what I'm doing now will be published. Publishing, and these can be used in courses. Prior to that, only one publications I knew that we did when I was here in the early 70s. That's J.J. Mills. But there are so much leading people in education that we need to highlight the core of their journey to become guide and theoretical guide for our own journey, right? And so through that, through seminars, publications, students doing graduate work, especially of a research nature, PhD and MPhils, should feel free to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to tackle the Mico, some aspect of it, as my PhD dissertation or as my MPhil dissertation. Right, so there are various ways in which we can capture that, not just for Mico alone, but for our own selves. Ourselves that is broader than the Mico, because the Mico is just a part of that, right? So, well, at the beginning of the introduction, you heard the thing from Garvey, people without knowledge of their history and what will happen. So we need to find different ways about our history, because our history is really marginalized in our school system now. Marginalized. Do you know that Paul Bogle, one of the reasons for their political activism was that they complained that the roads to their houses and their fields were not in good shape, left to run down. But the houses to the roads to the great houses and to the fields of the planters were well kept. There are Jamaicans who can say the same thing today. You can say the same thing today. Anytime I want to leave my house, me vex. I tell you, anytime I'm driving back home, me vex. Road, you know? But then in terms of history, we are just at the top. We have not even scratched it. Because if we knew the role of people of African descent and of people of the South to global civilization, if we know that, global inventions, global writing systems, global mathematics, if we knew that history, which we don't know, we will be transformed. We are living in a world of ignorance, and ignorance that is imposed. Ignorance that is imposed. And that is why I advocate that the best thing for us to do in the meantime is become sovereign learners. So we don't wait on a teacher to teach us certain things. We go search for it our own. Sovereign learners. And you go find people who know. When I'm sending people, when I tell my students, look, if you have if some event, some seminar is going on, even if it is not in your area, attend. But sir, we're going to get that not coming on our exam. You hear those things, right? But I'm telling you, what you get from knowing and your ability to teach yourself to know is the most powerful thing. That's where the power of education is. Okay? Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those questions. And the question coming from Mrs. Green Mitchell has sparked something within me, because one of my passion, based on my research, is decolonizing the curriculum. And as such, I have been thinking about new course outlines to write. So you're giving me ideas. So we will talk. All right, through the ITO and Professor Hutton, we will edit some courses and rewrite some courses and write new ones, especially the one about the Mico University College. And probably what we could do as we wrap up this segment is also start by putting up some storyboards around the campus. At least we start the conversation with some display about the history of the Mico. We could start there. So I'll come and have a conversation with you both. Okay, so we need to set it up on some designated areas around the campus to highlight our history. So we could start there, because I think that's an easy and quicker way to start. And then we'll go with the course. And thank you so much for that. And thank you all for sharing your questions and ideas. And once again, thanks to Professor Hutton for sharing, as we rightly deem it, a wealth of knowledge this afternoon. And so it is my opportunity to extend this brief vote of thanks on behalf of the Mico University College, and to thank the ITA, Director of ITA, and overall ITA for organizing this research day. And we are benefiting, I have benefited, you have benefited from the information that we have garnered this afternoon. I didn't realize it was an hour. You know, I was also caught up listening and watching that it felt like just 5 minutes. It was quite engaging, don't you think? So thanks again, Prof. Thank you all for coming and for staying. And at this point, we are now declaring the session closed, and also want to add that you continue to support the Mico Week of Activities. Thank you all. And if I'm sure there's nothing else. So thank you all and have a great evening and safe travel home. Thank you again, Prof.